Monotype.
Welcome to Creative Characters from Monotype, the show where we meet the people working at the intersection of type and everyday life. I'm your host, Molly Doane, and today I'm sharing a chat I had with Cyla Costa. Cyla is an award-winning graphic designer and lettering artist based in Brazil. She and her studio have done so many stunning projects, like a campaign for International Women's Day in Buenos Aires, a display font whose shapes and colors evoke tropical birds, and even custom lettering for a Washington Post article about Brazilian women who are challenging beauty norms. Here's Cyla speaking in our interview about that Washington Post project.
It was a story about Brazilian women that decided to leave their hair grow gray. So all Latin countries, and Brazil specifically, is very worried and rooted in this beauty industry. The Washington Post, they wanted the lettering to feel as bold and brave and rebellious as the quotes of these women.
My co-host Kadley is here, and we're going to talk a little bit about this episode before we jump in. Hi, Kadley.
Hi, Molly. Thank you so much for interviewing Cyla. I know this is your first time hosting on Creative Characters, and we're really happy to have you on the mic.
This is my first time hosting the podcast, any podcast, really. I was nervous, but I was excited, and it definitely helped that the interviewee was a friend of mine. This is not my first time on the mic, though. In a past life, I actually hosted a radio show.
What was your radio show about?
It was just a silly college radio show in the middle of the night. I'd feature a different genre of music every week, and listeners would call in to report campus gossip.
I love that. Carl, one of the brains behind the podcast, also had a college radio show that was in the middle of the night. So
yeah,
you have that in common.
In the middle of the night, you get the most freedom, for sure.
So Monotype's foundry partner, Plow, brought Cyla to TypeCon this year to speak. Most of our listeners probably know what TypeCon is, but for those of you who don't, it's exactly what it sounds like. A big type conference held in Portland, Oregon every year. Monotype sponsors it, along with a handful of other type companies and foundries. And I believe you were the driving force behind getting Cyla to this conference. How did she get on your radar?
I had the opportunity to attend Diatipo Sao Paulo in Sao Paulo, Brazil in December of last year, 2024. I'd only been back at Monotype for a month, and I was really excited to see new faces in the community. Some of my teammates introduced me to Cyla, and I was immediately drawn in by her use of color and the themes that show up in her work, like identity, inclusion, and feminism. But then fast forward to ATypI Copenhagen in April of this year, I casually mentioned to Rodrigo from Plow, who's also Brazilian, how much I wished I could bring Cyla to Portland to represent the vibrant work being produced in South America. And the next thing I knew, Rodrigo was booking her flights, and we were announcing her as a keynote speaker for 2025 at TypeCon.
I feel like it's the best when you get to champion someone like that and just someone that you fall in love with their work and get to show them off. It's fun.
Yeah, and you know what? It's really a testament to, you never know what will happen if you don't ask.
It's very true. So why do you think you connect with Cyla's work so much?
I think Cyla's work just feels alive. It's like her lettering and colors that she uses carry emotion before you even read the words. She reflects on her experiences as a Latin American woman, and her work always makes a statement.
Powerful. Well, thank you again so much for hosting this week. And with that, I will hand it over to you and Cyla for the episode.
Hi, Cyla.
Hi, Molly. I'm so happy to be here. It's such a pleasure. I will introduce myself in Portuguese, my mother language. Eu sou a Cyla Costa, eu sou designer gráfica e designer de tipos de Curitiba, Brasil. I am Cyla Costa. I am a graphic and type designer from Curitiba, Brazil. And at my studio, we work with all kinds of projects in which letters are protagonists.
You know, I met you about a year ago, and already I was able to bring you to a different conference here in the States, and just the ability to share your perspective in so many different places in the world is such a neat thing about what we do.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about TypeCon, and we were so excited to bring you out to Portland for our conference. What was it like to share your work with a new audience?
It was so amazing. It was such a great experience. I'm also very grateful of all the events that I'm part of. And I'm also very happy that we all got to meet last year in Tipo, São Paulo. And I think this is the main part of the events, building community. And I feel that the people that work with typography and in all the areas around it, we are usually more like united than other fields in graphic design. I feel this because, I don't know, maybe because we share this kind of crazy passion of letters.
It's pretty specific.
Yeah, right? It's so specific. So I guess it's that feeling that once you find people that share this passion, is you just want to keep close to them.
I love that wherever I go, there's friends. I meet friends in one country and then we all travel, a year later and we can catch up and connect and share what's new.
Isn't this amazing? We end up making friends all over the world in different parts of the country, in my case, in different parts of the world. So TypeCon was such a beautiful experience. Thank you so much for having me. It was really amazing because I usually do talks in Brazil and in Latin America. And other than this, I went to Australia also to give a talk some years ago before the pandemic. But it was my first time speaking at a conference in the US. And I was very happy to have been invited to be one of the keynote speakers because I always wanted to attend TypeCon. So being invited to speak was really like a huge honor for me.
I'm so glad.
I always get a little nervous before doing talks, especially when I talk in another language that's not my own, which is Brazilian Portuguese. I try to use this as a fuel to bring some energy to the stage.
You do. I mean, I think everybody feels your energy when you talk about your work.
Thank you. I guess we Brazilians, we do have this kind of electric energy. I don't know, something going on about our culture. And I talk about that a lot in my talk too.
I wanted to ask you about Curitiba, in that context and how it was different from, what you explored in Portland and just the different community.
So I'm from the city in the south of Brazil called Curitiba. I was born here. I still live here. I lived abroad in Barcelona and another time in New York. So I have these experiences living abroad, but somehow I always end up coming back to Curitiba. And it has its ups and downs. Weather-wise, it's a very crazy city. Like today, it's a very rainy, cold day. And it's spring, so it shouldn't be like this. It's a very moody city. At the same time, it's organized, it's clean. I live in a very nice, comfortable neighborhood. It's close to my mom's house. It's close to my kids' school. So I guess it's a city that has a nice balance between having a lot of stuff going on because it is the capital of the state. It's a big city. But it's not a crazy city like São Paulo that you take 1 hour to go to anywhere.
Yeah.
So I do like this energy that Curitiba has. The design community here is not as big or engaged as they are in São Paulo, for instance. But we are very close to São Paulo. We're like a 45 flight away from São Paulo. So I usually go there for Tipo. Every year I spend a week there for Tipo. We do have a community here, but I guess it's not as energetic as in São Paulo. Everybody that works with typography in Curitiba know one another. We're a very small community,
I was going to ask you about Sao Paulo and just how Brazilians communicate so expressively and what the differences you see are that make Brazilian communities stand out.
I guess we do have this specific way of being as a Latin country, and specifically Brazil. It's so unique, the mix of cultures that we have in Brazil, that somehow this reflects in our way of being creative, because we don't have all the resources we need sometimes to create in the university or at our houses. We're a warm country weather-wise and also in terms of relating to each other. So I guess this is pretty unique to Brazilian people and Brazilian creatives. And this somehow shows up in our creativity when we work with visual arts and any form of creativity. Whenever I visit some other country, I see the difference. I guess every country, every part of the world has a different cultural soup that makes it special, right?
Definitely. We've touched on you having your own studio in Brazil. It's Cyla Costa Studio. Can you tell us more about what goes on there and who your team is?
Yeah. So people many times think that I work alone because it was like this in the past, but it's been 4 years now that I have Aline Kaori working with me. She's a dear friend, a very talented calligrapher and type designer. And then we have Duda, who is my partner in life and in work. He works with motion design and he works at the studio too. And when we take on more complex projects, we form teams of type designers and graphic designers. And I've been specializing now on doing the creative direction of things. So being in this new role for me of doing the direction and not actually having to do the operation myself, it's been very interesting. And I still love to do the creative part, and I don't want to give this up, never. So it's been about finding a balance. But it's been also so great to have the opportunity to work with other creatives and build more conceptually and also have the expertises and more tools to work with the projects we do in the studios as we take bigger and more complex projects.
You grew up in Brazil and are used to that community in Sao Paulo, but then you decided to go pursue education in Barcelona. Did you already have a passion for lettering when you moved to Barcelona?
So the story was when I graduated here from design school, I was 23, and I kept working at the design studio here in Curitiba. But I felt that I didn't have enough room to pursue a more expressive design practice. So I started to look for some masters abroad. A friend of mine was already in Barcelona and she was telling me, you should come, it's an amazing city. And my grandfather is Spanish. We had a lot of friends from other countries of Latin America growing up. So I was used to Spanish. I didn't speak that much, but I felt comfortable going to a Spanish-speaking country. Well, I'm going to say this because not all people know, but Brazil is the only country in Latin America that speaks Portuguese. We are surrounded by Spanish-speaking countries. So I went to Barcelona to study illustration. It was this master's at EINA, and it was in Spanish and also Catalan. So I had to learn a little Catalan, which was very interesting. My Spanish got good. And I was learning about creative illustration and how to create visual pieces with illustration. And I didn't really feel that I could illustrate. But by the end of this semester, I felt that I could create illustrated pieces of design and books. And I noticed that intuitively, I already put letters in my illustrations, maybe because of my graphic design background. But they were very integrated to the illustrations. So you could say they were lettering pieces, like illustrated lettering. But I didn't have formal education on this. And then the next year, I stayed in Barcelona a bit more and I did another master. And this time it was at Elisava. It was editorial design with a focus on typography. And they really focused on typography, like they really micro stuff in typography. So this was very rich for me. It was a rich experience. So when I came back to Brazil, I was a little lost, like, oh my God, what should I do? What can I pursue as a career? What industry inside of design? This was 2008. So it was kind of the boom of the lettering industry, because I didn't know that I could even work doing this, drawing letters. And at this point, a lot of things were going on. And so I started looking for more information online. And I found some workshops and events going on, especially Dia Tipo. This is why Dia Tipo is such a dear event to me. The one that happens in São Paulo every year. And sometimes it happens in other parts of Brazil too. But I went to São Paulo and I started going every year and taking workshops on lettering, calligraphy. So getting to dive into this whole typography world deeper and deeper.
I mean, eventually you decided to go to Cooper Union, so you must have liked it.
Yes, definitely. So I started working with lettering. I actually kind of forced my clients, to hire me as a lettering artist because they wanted to hire me as an illustrator or a graphic designer. And I was like, hey, I do lettering too. This is what you should hire me for. So I started working with lettering and I spent some years doing that. It was a really great time. My work was getting better, but I did feel that I was lacking some education in type design. I didn't feel like I was necessarily going to be a type designer, but it would be good to have this to make me a good drawer of letters in general. So I found out about Cooper Union and I went to New York to spend a year there, like a sabbatical year, and just experiencing the city and going to type events and whatever I could do. And it was really a great learning experience, but at the same time, I felt that I couldn't bring all of who I am into doing type design because the idea was to do a text typeface. And I did my best. But it was not like a great typeface, I like to show it in my talks because it's part of my history. But I felt like I had to accommodate many things to make it work. It took me a long time to reach a point where I am now that I can do type design and still be expressive as I want to be.
Yeah, and use your own voice in your work.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Cyla, your work is so expressive, so colorful, vibrant colors. I feel like it provokes questions about identity and inclusion and feminism. Is there anything that you took away from Cooper Union that helped you build your own studio and get to that point where you could be expressing yourself in the way that you felt most authentic?
Definitely. I guess the university here in Curitiba was the solid base foundation for everything. But what really made me what I am now professionally were the Barcelona experiences and the Cooper experience. So I guess each one of them gave me more tools to work with. Because it's hard when you want to express yourself, but you don't have the tools. You do have to channel that creativity and that energy through an industry somehow. So all these education experiences were paramount for me to be able to reach that and be expressive as I want to be in my work.
I can also imagine that being a woman from Latin America in a field where you can't always be the authentic self that we're talking about. And I'm wondering, were there challenges that came with bringing your culture to your clients or the community at large? Were there opportunities that happened as a result?
More opportunities than challenges, because usually people come to me with specific requests for our line of work at the studio. So I'm very glad to have built this identity, to have this colorful, strong palettes, very focused on typography, expressive work. A piece I showed in TypeCon, the article that we did for the Washington Post, It was letterings with quotes of Brazilian women. It was a story about Brazilian women that decided to leave their hair grow gray. So this was a way of challenge society in the country like Brazil. So all Latin countries, and Brazil specifically, is very worried and rooted in this beauty industry and plastic surgery. So the Washington Post, they wanted the lettering to feel as bold and brave and rebellious as the quotes of these women.
This is a movement of resistance, right?
Yes, this is the name of the article. This is a movement of resistance. So I love when people call me to do these bold projects, feminist projects, inclusive projects, because it's really amazing to work with a theme that you were passionate about, right? You give shape to a theme that you feel is very important. But also at the studio, we try and embrace versatility. So it's not always that we get to work with the concept that we find important at the studio too. So we do a lot of commercial work, which is as important as the more artistic and cultural work. Also to give balance, because if we only do social or feminist projects, then we wouldn't have the timeline or excellency that commercial works demand you to have. So I do love to have this balance.
Yeah. In my own life, there's projects that I do on a regular basis, and they're the kind of project that make me feel at home because I know exactly what I'm doing. But then you like to mix it up with something that challenges you, something that like gets you to communicate in a new way, pushes your boundaries. I think that's a really good duality to have in your work life.
Definitely. Also because we need to feel a bit uncomfortable in order to grow in any aspect of life, professionally too. So yeah, I love to be challenged to do something I never did. And we do have this motto at the studio of like always trying to push boundaries and do things differently in a new way and finding new visual languages and working with this versatility of languages, you know?
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed about your work is like sometimes you play with the edge of legibility where the form itself is carrying as much meaning as the words that you have illustrated. How do you think about balancing expression and readability when you are designing letter forms?
Oh, it's a very good question, especially for me. For me, it's very important to think about letters as visual forms that communicate in many levels. So letters are not only to be read. I always say that, and I will keep repeating that. Some people don't like this, but for me, letters and typography is an expression of the zeitgeist of whatever is going on right now in the visual world that we live in. And it's not all about reading. So we can do text typefaces if we want to, if we are commissioned to. Maybe in the future we'll do this for retail, but for now, the only thing that we did for retail are display typefaces and like very display, like Juma, which is my color font. When we talk about readability and legibility, this is everything that Juma is not. And I do love to challenge the eyes of who is looking Juma to see if they can read what is there. I mean, you can read, you just have to pay attention. And it was really great for me when I was developing Juma to work on each letter as if it was an illustration. So I was really shaping those letters. I worked for a long time in each letter and all of the glyphs to make it a visual piece that was almost an illustration when you look at it on the paper or on the screen. And it can also like have this physicality if you bring it to life. I love this idea of bringing the letters to a place where they can be felt. They can be seen as shapes, as objects, as a visual piece that is not only to be read.
I heard that you're not allowed to have advertisements on the side of buildings in Sao Paulo. And so I saw a lot of art where I would expect to see commercials, more or less.
Yeah, there are a lot of murals in São Paulo, in the empenas that we call the side of the buildings. We have a lot in Curitiba too, but São Paulo, there's a whole movement. Of course, it's a very big city with many, many buildings. And some years ago, maybe almost decades, they put up this law that you couldn't have advertising, like big billboards all over the city because of visual pollution. So, I was very glad they did this because I also love urban art. And São Paulo is such an energetic and blooming place for all of the urban arts. It's part of the city, really. It's amazing. And I also do murals sometimes. I never had the chance to paint in pena. I'm a little afraid of heights too. So each time I paint a mural, I have to get over that fear a little bit. Actually, when I painted the mural I told you about in San Diego.
In San Diego, yeah.
It was a big challenge for me because it was a very tall mural.
These pieces of artwork that are seen from such a distance and so high up are like a really interesting opportunity for you to push the boundaries of the letter forms, like with Juma. And how important is it for people to actually quickly read a message, or does it have more impact when somebody has to really think about what they're looking at, especially when the artwork is larger than life,
Yeah, exactly. And like when you're talking about urban art, if you go through a mural every day and you really don't realize it's something to be read, and then at some point, someday you realize, oh, something is written here. It's also this click is important. And even as you perceive, like with Juma, we did a lot of applications, like samples of the font working. And some of them are nothing to be read. Some of them are just like collision of characters and how they relate to each other. And they can be seen as a composition, as an illustrated composition. And then, bling, you suddenly read something there. So I'm very interested in this encounter of illustration and letter forms and letter shapes. I find it very stimulating, and I'm always trying to push those boundaries of legibility and readability to see where I can get.
It's also interesting because to a person who is not as absorbed in the world of type and lettering and design, you may think, when you're reading the written word, that the emotions that you feel are a result of what you've read. But what you're describing is being able to evoke those similar emotions in somebody without them even being able to understand or read the message from first glance.
Yeah, it's actually like a piece of art where the person who's looking at it has to be a part of it. Yeah, sometimes we just get in this very thin line between design and art. It depends on what you want to communicate and how you want to communicate with your audience. So mainly, I work with design and communication. Things have to be clear when I work with commissioned projects. But when I get the chance to do personal projects or like a retail font like Juma is, I can do whatever I want. And yeah, I'll just put it out in the world and see what happens. And also with murals. With murals, usually they're not commissioned. So like the mural that I did in San Diego, it says saudade, which is this very special word in Portuguese. And it's not really readable. It takes a while, And again, it's very nice to just have the chance of working visual balance, composition of shapes, of colors. So when I do these murals, I'm thinking more of the composition as a painting, more like an artist than a designer.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious too, when I was in Brazil, somebody made a joke to me about being at the bottom of the world. And I never really thought about that, but you are at a significant distance from many of the communities that you maybe want to connect with or that you work with professionally. Is there anything that you feel like the Brazilian design community needs, or what do you think would help the Brazilian type community, the Brazilian design community to become more integrated with what goes on in the rest of the globe?
I guess a big barrier for us is the travel cost of going abroad to be part of other events. And we also have this really nice and complete type community in Brazil that sometimes we just like, okay, we're going to be here and be part of this local community of Latin America too. For instance, going to a Taipai, it's hard for us to pay for all of this. But I can see that year by year, the Brazil type community is more infiltrated in other events. Like this year, I was one of the keynote speakers of TypeCon, a Brazilian person, So there are some people in Brazil that are opening this path to go to international events, also because we have the opportunity. Many people don't have the opportunity. So I feel lucky to have this opportunity and open maybe some ways for younger generations to come and fill this space. But yeah, I feel that we are very connected and integrated with Latin American typographers, but there is a distance with European countries, with the global north. We have this, when you said the south of the world or the bottom of the world. So there is a very big social, economical difference between the south part and the north part of the world. So yeah, many layers in that, but I can't leave out the social economical part of it, definitely.
When you say that you can be comfortable in Sao Paulo, it's because there are so many communities in South America that are working together and creating that environment that makes you feel less disconnected from the rest of the world. You have what you need. It's just in the context of your community.
Yeah, I guess we do have this feeling, there is a lot going on here in Latin America. So many people just feel comfortable here. But I do think it's interesting to have this connection with another culture too, with different cultures. Like when you look at typography and you see different schools of typography like German or Dutch. So it would be interesting to have more connection to those worlds.
A lot of the formal type design education is definitely rooted in Northern culture.
Yeah, but mainly when we learn typography and type design, it comes from this lineage that white, male, European people set in the past.
Right.
Whereas it's also important to keep the connection with everything that was done, definitely with the history of typography. I think it's also important, something that's going on, that is like finding what is our way of doing things here in Latin America. So when we search for this expressiveness in type design, how can our culture be perceived in what we do, in the letters that we draw? So it's very important that we also have space for that. And this doesn't have necessarily to be like distancing ourselves from these more historic lineages. It's important to have this also, but it's so very important to create something of our own. It's been cooking right now here. Typography in Latin America is very effervescent right now. Lots of things going on.
Is there any kind of project that you haven't been able to work on that you hope someday you get to work on?
Oh, there are many, many times. But a type of project that's always been on my mind, I've actually done labels for whiskey. This will be the 4th year that I do labels for Pendleton whiskey.
Oh, fun.
So there's this design studio called Safari Sundays in New York, and they call me to do this label. But this is something like a whiskey that's like this Western visuals, which is very interesting. But I guess I've always wanted to do wine labels, like really illustrated and lettered wine labels. So maybe this will happen sometime. I'm not trying very hard, to get in this industry, but maybe I will do that in the future.
Organically.
Yeah. Hopefully it will get to me organically. Some wine label big boss will hear this podcast and will say, oh, we should call that expressive person. Yeah.
I look forward to sharing a glass of wine with you out of a bottle that you designed the label on.
Oh, yes, me too. Yay. It could be Argentinian wine. So many Argentinian wines.
The thoughts are percolating now. It's been so great to have you on the podcast, Cyla. So good to talk to you. Thank you for being here. I hope you had a good time today.
I always have a good time talking to you. I do hope to see you soon back in Brazil.
Yes, I hope so too.
Thank you so much for having me. I guess I always wanted to be a part of Creative Characters ever since it was written and we got it by email. So yeah, it's been an honor for me, really. Obrigada.
Same here. Obrigada.
You can check out Cyla and her studio's work at cylacosta.com. That's CYLACOSTA.com.
Thanks for listening. If you like our show, please subscribe, rate us, and share us with a friend. Creative Characters is brought to you by Monotype. It's produced by Christopher Olin and Mia Sullivan. We'll be back in a couple weeks. See ya.